This pack job is going to be a very real-world scenario. This one's exploratory in that the jumper received it and just wasn't happy with how it came out aesthetically. So this is something that we see commonly. The way the bulk distribution sits within the reserve tray that really doesn't lend to a clean or pretty shape. Very common, we see this in the field where the S-fold stack is wider, has somewhat of a tapered shape to it. I see dents in the riser covers, creases that then come from that, and excess bulk under the riser covers due to the placement of the risers. I deal with this a lot at the loft of how to refine the packing to make it look as good as it can be. And so we're gonna kind of dig into that. So this is the first time I've seen this gear. I did have another rig to pack, but I figured why not do a very real scenario of how to better a pack job to make it look good, function properly, and satisfy the customer is pretty important to me. So I'm gonna remove his main. As I have not seen this gear before, this pack job is gonna be to determine what we're doing with it. Obviously, if bringing it back online, we'll do that in a more sterile environment than this.
What size are the two categories you're pushing out?
I'm not positive what his main is currently, honestly, or reserve, so I'm about to find out all of these things together. We'll release the main. And yeah, again, all of these will be repacked, so it might look a little scary how I'm staging it right now. Okay. So we'll kind of unpack it together so we can see what it looks like. On first assessment, I can see that there's a lot of bulk in the bottom. It's pushing out to the sides. I don't have a clean, sharp line here. Density-wise, there is some softness to the ear, quite dense, and some softness here. The ideal shape of a vector pack job is going to be an aggressive wedge shape with 3 different densities: hard, medium, and silly soft at the top. Having soft ears in a vector is important to help the riser covers close properly, and so you don't have this section of the reserve tray pushing into your back, just uncomfortable at that point. Let's see, move the seal. As I'm unpacking a previous pack job, I do ensure that the lines are well away from the Velcro when I'm pulling them out. If we can limit any damage during this, of course we will. I'm kind of trapping either side of the lines so they feed nicely through and don't have a chance to snag on the Velcro. So not absurd. We've seen it before. Likely functional. I won't determine that until I would see it in actual use, but it's probably just fine. It meets the criteria. We've got that center cell opened. Slider is quartered. Lines are near center. Fabric to the outside definitely would work, but we can always refine that. On first assembly, it's good to ensure that these lark's heads are cinched down. In the moment of RSL activation, if they're cinching at that time, there is the chance that they burn or melt through the lanyard here, so I do take my time on a new assembly to make sure those are snug. Looking all right over here. while I've got it here, I can change the placement of the AED a bit. I do feel some of the cables are sitting on top of the AED's unit, so I'll change that orientation. This shows that you do have a few options with how to place the excess cable, and we'll go through that. Cool, so I start by placing the unit into the pocket. Between different length rigs, the placement of the cable will vary. So in this instance, if I ran this straight up, brought it back on itself within the channel, perfectly acceptable way to store the cable. It might be just slightly excessive up here. Because I see that's the case, I'm going to place one turn of the cable around the entire unit. Using a rubber band is perfectly fine here. Each time I take care to ensure that it's not sitting on top of the unit and does trail around the outside. Once a reserve is in place, I know that that is unlikely to budge and would, of course, check it each time on subsequent pack jobs. With one turn around there, I can then thread or feed the control unit into the white channel. Obviously, being reasonably careful with the wires. They're a bit more resilient than people let on, but we don't want to cause premature wear on an expensive component. With that now fed through, I can actually turn back a small S-fold within this white channel. This does two things, or this does something that I appreciate seeing on this. Sometimes when all the cable is down in the pocket, your control unit is sitting nicely in the window, you finish your pack job and you realize that it's now under tension or has crept away from the window. All of that excess is bound by the reserve, and pulling it wouldn't be a smart move. So by having a little buffer here, that little S-fold of it, if I get to the end of the pack job and find I need it, it is under way less pressure to pull a little more excess there. You can either go straight from the white channel into the window or through the slit in the back pad. The manual does say to use the slit in the back pad. And on most containers, I find that it is perfectly feasible, though, to use it.
Do you go underneath the diagonal or over the top of the diagonal?
Over top of the diagonal, so it would be between the diagonal and the back of the reserve tray itself. Going under the diagonal would be an excessive reach, and then under tension could sever the cable or cause wear on your diagonal. We'll open that pocket, slip her in. Not a bad idea to have the vigil on when you're working around with it, so if suddenly it has turned off, you know that you have damaged something. With the cutter cable, we could either do small circles under the flap, or we can do one pass around the unit itself, which is, in this case, my preferred. Around the corner, sits nicely, not too aggressive a bend there, and then sufficient length to make it to the elastic. Cutter in place, everything's relaxed. Slip the tuck tab under the Type 1 tape. Cool. Happier with that. Feels a bit more consistent here. I have my little S-fold buffer there through the slit in the back pad into the window. Okay. These packing boards are something we use in the rigging loft, and I really appreciate using them. It's perfectly reasonable to pack without one, but I like to use it to help organize the slinks, keeps things balanced and even, and it's a tool that would be impossible to leave in a pack job, so I prefer it. Checking the slinks, I've got 4 lines on either side, double, and proper routing for the lark's head. Look at that. Was missed.
Just the one.
There was one line that did not have 2 passes through it, so this is absolutely
I had
worth
that
being
before.
checked. Yeah, not the end of the world, but we can do better. We owe it to our customers and ourselves to want more for our performance.
I saw the worst one.
That's something.
And people jumping on that one.
Okay.
Parachutes have been assembled by human beings for many years now, but human beings are still human beings.
That is the truth. It's what Bill Booth says. The one component of skydiving he can't fix is the human.
Who teach me everything? He told me, if you're not sure, ask or don't touch.
Best to just guess and send it.
4-4, double, and proper routing and cinched. 4, proper routing. All right. Release the brakes. You may find that this Velcro seems excessive when you see it for the first time. We really ask that people don't trim the Velcro. The way you stow may not be the way the next rigger in line stows, and you could shorthand them, leaving them without enough Velcro to sufficiently cover the lines.
Can I ask you about the placement of the loop over that brake?
Yes, that was shallow. That side was very shallow. Is that what you saw?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, a little more care to ensure that it's set deeply, but okay. One rubber band is new. All right, now we can actually start packing. Great. Okay, I have this one. Pick up the lines to separate them. I'm going to run them on up. I'll check that the lines are clear past my slider. That's clear to the tail there, clear to the tail here. I'll bring it up and onto my shoulder. Because this is my first encounter of it, I'd just like to see that they're at least oriented properly. So I'm checking that outside C and D together as one, cascades into a single line to the outside of the rear. A to B, check it, outside of front riser. I'm happy with that. The standard ProPack method is what most of us have come to for packing reserves. We do a slightly modified version of that, utilizing some clamps. As a note, I use a lot of tools in a pack job. There is some ego involved with the number of tools that one uses. In my opinion, use tools properly, safely, efficiently, and I don't see an issue as long as you're responsible with them and ensure you have every single one you started with. So the modified section of this starts with counting the nose normally to ensure I have 7 cells. And then we'll fan it out, as in the start of a flat pack. I use 4 small clamps that will be placed along the top skin. Bringing the nose over and in line with my packing board, I can flip back to the first cell closest to the floor. With my fingers on either side of that rib there, I can pull tension through the canopy and align my line attachment points at the same time. My eyes are looking here, my hands and feet are working on this side of things to help this all fall into alignment. There's 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. Cool. With all of my A's stacked, I can see the seam through the skin. That bar tack is usually very visible, the nose bar tack. If I draw a line up to the edge, and then maybe back about an inch, I would much prefer to have my nose in line with the A's as opposed to having this excessive nose sitting outside of the canopy, because that has eaten into my A to B flake that should be very symmetrical here. So if I bring that back to where it was, ensure I didn't lose too much alignment, draw that line up to the top skin, and that's a pretty good placement for my clamp. Cool. Moving to the B lines, we'll do the same. I pull that back just so I can see the attachment at the stabilizer. And then using my hands, I'm shifting the 2 layers to bring those lines into alignment. Let's see where it is. To some, this is an excessive step. I find that it gives me a really repeatable product. If I can reduce as many variables as possible, I can have a more scientific approach to how I pack. And then I'm only down to container and canopy combinations that would change the pack job. 7 cells there with the B stacked. On optimums, we have the load tape, the seam tape between the B attachment points that you can somewhat see through the translucent skin. If I draw that line up to the edge and then aft maybe 4 inches or so, that's going to be proper placement for the clamp. You'll find on PRs that these seams are at a more acute angle here. The end of the seam where it comes from here is usually about in line with where a clamp should be placed. Playing with this method till you find what works for you is necessary. It is hard to just download this knowledge just from seeing it. Don't get frustrated. Call me if you need me. I'm always happy to answer questions at the loft and help you do the best job you possibly can. Moving back to the C lines now. Bring that into alignment. Seven stacked nicely. And the D lines. For the D lines, I am less worried about exact laser sharp placement. We will address the flaking and reduction of this section later in the pack job, so I try not to spend time that I'm going to have to double back on. Cool. At this point, I flip the tail towards the canopy, towards the container to give myself some slack, and then I'll set the brakes. Cat's eye past the guide ring, tip of the toggle through the cat's eye. And then mate the Velcro, ensuring that all of the hook Velcro is covered. Cleanly S-fold your excess. I like to try and keep it within the limits of the Velcro, so nothing is protruding. That hook Velcro is slightly longer than you would want to see it, but that being the case, we'll just put a singular fold into it. and then mate the pile to the hook. Cool. It now begins, as you're likely familiar with, picking up the lines, running them up to the canopy, and starting a pro pack. All right, I'll count out the nose. 7 cells, I'll take those in hand. At this point, I have a good access to peek in for that first flake, so I will preemptively place that, then bring the slider into the center cell. I'll pinch it with my knees, again, not eating into the A to B flake, but staying near the nose of the canopy. Stand up and let it relax. Reach in first to the A to B flake. Separate 4 from 4. As you can see, the weight of the clamps themselves help to pull these flakes into alignment right away. They give you an upper hand when it comes to flaking it on the ground, because this is already pretty close to where I want it to be, but I'll of course dress it up further. A to B, B to C, A to B, B to C. Slider is 3/4 of the way there. Cleaning the stabilizer, working my way into the tail, getting that fabric to the outside. I'll pick up the long D lines, steering lines, and the D line that always hides. With the D attachment points, I'll bring them to the center. Let that relax. With your slider grommets for the tail side that we're looking at, you can either flip them inside or outside. It is personal preference at that point. Does not affect functionality. For the sake of this pack job, let's leave them to the inside. With everything loosely flaked at this point, I'll hang the canopy off my hand, looking at the nose. I take a second to align my A attachment points there, and then I'll grab each of the seams of the nose, somewhat smooth them together. Not a crucial step, but it does make things look nicer, cleaner, makes your job easier. I'll expose that center cell. I'll place the bulk of the canopy onto my forearm, step out to the side, and bring it to the floor. At home, I will use a large shot bag, about these dimensions, just 4 or 5 pounds. Placing that here keeps those lines in place, and it's a tool, yet another tool that I won't be able to lose within a pack job. Using the bridle is definitely an option because you need that to finish closure, so not too big a deal to use a bridle. Not a fan of pull-up cords there unless you are meticulous and responsible with them. Now moving to the apex of the canopy, I'll flip everything back gently to the nose. I've got my center cell, 1, 2, 3 to my left, 3 to my right. I'll bring that clamp down and in line with my lines with the container. 3 this way, 3 that way. Next layer, 3, 3, crinkly center cell, falls right to the middle. I'll lift, flake, and let that clamp rest to the middle. As you can see right away, they're just falling into place. This would be something you'd have to be very delicate with if I didn't have clamps or use weights at this point. I respect anybody who can pack that way. It's just not efficient for me. So I see the placement of the clamps has kind of tapered this section in. We have an option here of slipping this canopy a bit, slipping this clamp a bit more forward. I see that it makes this A to B flake pretty square, and then it might have given a little more to the B to C flake. See how that looks. That's getting pretty close. This clamp I may shift slightly aft. And that's in better alignment. I'm happier with the nature of that. For the D clamp, kind of do the same, 3 and 3, center cell, clamp to the middle, go with that. All right. To start the actual flaking, I'll scoop everything above the A to B flake over to the side and lay out this section. I peek inside this first window of the canopy. I see my 4 B attachment points. I'll grab through the skin here, grabbing all 4, trap the A lines to the floor, and then flake to the outside. At this point, I then clean the inside seam, basically directing it to the center, moving my fabric to the outside. With my left hand, I'll trap the B lines in place, flip back to where I can see the B attachment points. And then for the visual, I'll expose it a little more. We find that span-wise seam that connects all your B attachment points. Left hand will guide it from the outside, right hand will guide it inside. I'm running that down that center line. There will come a point where I reach the apex, which is the bottom skin of the canopy here. I'll trap it down with my left hand from the outside, flip back to it, and then place a weight that now traps my A's and B's. I couldn't reach higher in the canopy, no need to further the flake up here. Place a weight as a centerline guide and a placeholder. Bring that B to C flake down, stack it on top. I peek inside and I see my C attachment points. I'll collect all 4 of those through the stabilizer. I'll flake against the weight till I can see that center seam. It's there, I'm happy with that. So flakes to the outside, C's to the center, and then trap it in place. I have easy access to the slider at this point, so I'll go ahead and input this quarter. C's down, flip back to the outside, lock them in place, and then I'll bring that weight up a layer. To get them out of the way, I collect all 4 D lines in hand, kind of loosely flake them to the outside. The seam from the C attachment points all the way around, I'm going to clean that now to the center. Left hand touches it from the outside, right hand guides it. When I reach its personal apex, I'll trap it from the outside and bring the weight up to protect my work. The D clamp has served its purpose. Visual on that, it's out of the pack job. 3 would be remaining. 4 D lines in hand. I'm going to flake out and away, exposing that center seam again. Intentionally placing the D lines in the center. Trapping them from the outside, I'll grab the stabilizer, work it out, finding the sewn seam I can see, pull that in line with the center. And then for the time being, I input just a singular fold to the middle. This later becomes an S fold, but this is a mental placeholder for me. Using this weight, I'll turn it perpendicular now to protect everything up here. All right. During the reduction, I'm going to address the tail again. So this flake is just a preemptive flake, just to get it somewhat closer to where it needs to be. Moving to the other side, I'll repeat the process, flipping everything A to B up. Peek inside, A lines against the floor, 4 B lines, 1, 2, 3, where's 4? 4 B lines in hand, I'll grab them through this outside skin, trap it to the floor, and then flake to the outside. Guiding them from the outside and inside, I'm going to keep that center seam running down the center channel. When I reach its apex, trap it, flip back to it. I'm light on weights on this trip, so I will use the ones from the other side. Usually would leave these 2 in place. Typically use 4 shot bags of this size and then a single large one here. B to C flake comes down. Grabbing my C lines in hand, I'll flake away. Central seam is exposed, stays nicely to the center. C lines in the center, trap it from the outside. I'll flake this quarter of the slider. And then move my weight up a layer. Move the D lines out of the way for clarity. My hand is on the outside, guiding that C span-wise seam. Let's see if I can find it. At its apex, lock it down from the outside. I have it under tension. And then I can bring a weight to root that in place. D lines, 4 in hand, flake away from the weight, into the center, trapped from the outside, tension on the stabilizer seam, singular fold to the center. These 2 weights come up to this layer, and then we will flake the tail. So it might not be as beautiful as you'd expect it to see at this point, but we will address this section during the reduction. At this point, I'll grab my free bag and prepare it with a soft bodkin. I like to reset the Velcro. Obviously, a good point of inspection would be to check your Velcro during your inspection. If you find that it has been rolled over to where it's lumpy, it won't be a consistent flat width, so I just reset it so it's nice and flat. Cool. I'll cinch the soft bodkin up a little so I have about a fist width. I know the depth of these containers, so I do a lot of it by feel. Don't give yourself too much room, because if you have the space, you will fill it. So start with what it will end up like in a packed configuration. Feels about right to me. I'll set the bag to the side. All right. So I can use the free bag as somewhat of a measurement tool to see how much I need to reduce the canopy. Classic methodology of reducing a canopy would be to take your flake, singularly fold it to the inside, whatever width it ends up, squish it to make it into the free bag. Through the years, we decided to refine that. This is a tip that's not in the manual, but this kind of shows how you can slightly adjust a method without fundamentally changing the concept or design. This is the limit of my free bag, Velcro to Velcro edge there. If I place that in the center and then take half of it, simulating a singular reduction fold, I would see that I would have about 1.5 inches to 2 inches that would be excess outside that would need to get squished to fit into the bag. If I change my approach, I can better size this reduction to fit this bag. To do that, I'll set it to the side. Everything from A to B up will get flipped over. To demonstrate what that reduction would look like, we'll do a singular just to see. So that's on down to the center channel. If I place the free bag centered, I have a lot of excess outside of there. That really contributes to like round sidewalls and bulging riser covers, and we want it sharper and taller. So with that set aside, I can input what we call a cheat fold, very small fold, not quite the full width of a reduction. And then I'll continue that reduction to the center. We can check measurement with this. Still slightly wider. Can back up, add about 1/2 inch or so. Cool. So exactly in line with my free bag. When it is centered on the lines, I'm happy to continue from here. We'll ensure we have 3 cells of the nose to our left here. 1, 2, 3, get them stacked. I'll pinch and pull them in line with the first reduction and then sweep them under, creating an S fold. B to C flake comes down. One last chance to address this quarter of the slider. Protect the C lines while I'm flaking it. Sometimes they get dragged out with the slider. Cool. We will mimic the reduction of the previous layer, maybe slightly smaller as that flake is inset from the A to B flake. That was significantly smaller. All right, the C to D flake, I do all of my folds up. So A to B, B to C, C to D is also up. I found its path of least resistance for this section. If I try and pull it down, I'm going to disturb a lot of that. If instead I allow it to go where it wants, it sits nicely that way. That's reduced in line with the 2 previous reductions. I'll grab the stabilizer seam, pull tension, centralize it, and then input an S fold. I'm going to steal the weights from this side for the time being. 1 and 2. I pack using this method because in the loft I have the benefit of time. I know in the field it is something that, if it is your livelihood, time is money. We need to remember that there's a line of doing it with the customer in mind or doing it with your bottom dollar in mind. And I would much prefer a meager life and happy people around me. When flaking the tail, I just kind of rough flaked my way to that center section. Now I'm going to actually clean up all of these seams. If I reach in on past the D lines, this kind of gives you a visual on the apex I'm talking about when I am reaching inside. For the D's, it would be up here. C's is a bit lower. B's is here. B's are here. I will take the 4 D lines in hand, pull tension on them, bring them to the central channel. I hook them with one of my hands, so now I've got both thumb and forefinger to address these seams. Working back to the first brake line attachment point, I can pull tension on it. If you'll see, this brake line and this D line are connected with a seam here. We'll pull tension, place it to the center, and then create this little loop in this upper section. Sunpath refers to this as the E-fold. Kenneth Gaida, our former master rigger, late master rigger in our loft, called it the Flugelfold. Pick a name, stick with it, just learn the concept. It's something that can help. This is a way to address the mysterious bulk we sometimes get in this section that doesn't seem to have a pathogen. Instead, we can acknowledge that there is errant bulk, and then this is the way to address that. You'll see that in just a second as I continue here. So I grab each seam, flake it to the outside, place it in the center, trap it, create my component of the Flugelfold, and carry on. For the last couple half cells, I'm doing this by feel. Definitely for the first few that you do using this method, look inside, see what you're doing. Over time, it does develop into a rhythm. One half cell away from center, I'll bring my weight up. Place that and immediately address this section of the tail. I want to reduce it in line with the rest of the canopy. I'll take the tail stack in hand, maybe about 12 inches or so. I'll lift up, flip straight under, and bring it in line with my reductions. Moving to the top section. Through each of these, I'm just directing that seam to the middle for a little more organization. Anything beyond this section of the canopy is just fluff. We've maintained tension on everything we intended to. What you do with this is going to ease your bagging and closing process. Flip that under, bring the weight up. The small loops we created just beforehand, going to be visible here. I'll thumb my way through them and collect them in hand. If any of y'all saw the tandem seminar earlier this morning, it was a bit more difficult to see as the D-lines have a cascaded nature to them. Let me see if I can pull that out. With all those in hand, I now have tension on the Ds and the brake lines in one go. Got tension there, I'll flip to the outside. I'm going to declare my center line, fold that section, do that again visibly. I'll fold that section back to the outside. So that is the E fold. If we have A, B, C, D, next one would be an E. That center seam, central, little bit of bulk set there, but flaked nicely. And now I know that I put effort into placing it. Won't come back to bite me. Trap that from the outside, ensure that my tail reaches my tail stack here. We can pull a weight up to this layer. Borrow that one for that side. I see one stray line. I'm trying to see what it took to get that under tension. There we go. Everything above A to B flips gently to the other side. We'll input a very similarly sized sheet fold to that first one. Singular reduction to the middle, and then we'll check to see that our width is what we want. I am maybe a ½ inch wider on this side, and that would make sense. There we go. Cool. Proof of concept, I'll just check. Pretty happy with that. That's quite even. 3 cells here. Pull them gently in line. Pinching in line with that A to B flake, sweeping them under to create an S fold. B to C comes down, one more point of access to the slider. Input my small cheat fold and reduce B to C. C to D, flip straight up. Tension on the stabilizer. Small S fold. All right, so I'll work my way back to the tail label. Peeking inside, I'll address the tail seams now. 4 D lines in hand, under tension, trap them to the center. Ring finger, middle finger of whatever hand hooks into them. So now I have my pinchers ready to work on the steering lines and tail seams. Tension, place, loop, trap that. Next one. Flake, tension, place, loop. Borrow that. Half cell away from tail label. Take the tail stack in hand. Up, under, back down. Place a clamp capturing the meat of that. I'll smooth those seams to the center just to organize the fluff. Up and under, mimicking the lower section. Clamp captures it all. Because the tail is somewhat restricted now, I can't really open it up to complete that E fold or flugel fold. So I kind of just thumb my way through it. When I feel that I have them all in hand and under tension, I'll declare that line from the outside, fold back onto it. My hand is straightening that seam up here at the apex. So wrapping the tail at this point, make sure my lines are contained within the fabric. Okay, place these, or separate these 2 clamps. These weights have served their purpose, if only for a brief time. Kind of peek in and see everything looks pretty clean, about how I'd want it. I do take a second to create the kind of hood in the slider here. Work out a bit more, maybe a 1/4 cell more on either side. Trap it to the floor. I place this above the A to B, but below the B to C flake. Instead of completely enveloping the canopy, I like placing it here. It gives me a bit sharper of an edge and does not hinder opening characteristics or functionality. Cool, center seam still centered. I'll smooth it up with my forearm, and then that again gives me both hands to work to fan out this section and contain the reductions. All right. Can check to see that that is pretty much the exact width of the free bag. That's what we're looking for. All right, I'm gonna hop on this side. Cool, so now we're going to do the S-folds. Within this free bag, we have some limiting factors. We talked earlier about the shape that we are looking to achieve, the aggressive wedge with 3 differing densities. I really want to be able to stack up this section, but not have so much ear that it makes too much density here. We can plan how we do that. Within the section of S-folds, we have 2 limiting factors. We have the grommet line, which is where your loop is going to come through, as well as your Velcro line, which is the upper or the lower limit of the mouth of the free bag. I can use my paddle as somewhat of a ruler to measure that. Got my full space between there. If I make it that space, if I make it that full length, the canopy will be pushing into the loop. Instead, I'll come back about 1 inch, use that as my starting measurement. If I count right from the grommets, my grommets will sit at the mouth. If I shift back 1 inch, they'll be slightly inset. Bear with me, this is conceptual. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lengths of fabric folded within the S-fold stack. From grommets, 1, 2, what is down touching the floor, 3, all of that comes up, 4, last fold, 5. Anything beyond that is what we reduce for the ears. The way this measured out, that looks like an appropriate amount of ear for what I'm trying to achieve. Go back and measure that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks about right, so 5, 4. 1 sec, I got lost. Yeah, I'm still trying to find a better way to explain what I just planned with that. If at any point in y'all's exploration of this you find a way, call me and tell me, because I would love to hear it. This is a way to plan how much bulk we have to have in the S-fold to ensure we don't have too much for the ear. This could involve overdoing an S-fold to where it could be this big, but when you place your paddle and fold everything back this way, that excess would get incorporated into this stack. Not really a big deal to allow that to happen, and I use that a lot on tandems, and yeah, certain combinations of rigs will need that, that cheat fold within the S-folds. 1, 2, 3, I like the paddle placement to be right there for this one. With the paddle nicely rooted, I'll scoop under the lines. Allow the canopy to slip towards the container. When my grommets are vertical over my paddle, I'll trap it with my toe to address the nose of the slider. I like to mimic that hood shape to it, so I just flip it out there. A-lines are still mostly where they should be. Haven't crept too far out. I'm happy to continue. I'll place a paddle just above those attachment points, and as I let it relax backwards, you'll see that the grommet should be inset about 1 inch, which roughly, that keeps them away from the AAD and has given me a proper S-fold. The classic method would then be to place your paddle right on top of that S-fold, fold back this way. The cheat fold I was speaking about could be slipping the paddle back to here and allowing some of this first fold to get incorporated back here. That both stacks this section taller and pulls it away from the closing loop. Can be beneficial. These are tips and tricks that you can kind of use across the board. Obviously check with the other manufacturers before using them, but I've found that it does help me to better shape canopies to fit in certain containers. So I'll place my paddle just, I don't know, 1/2 inch, 3/4 down onto this one, scoop under the canopy, right hand stays rooted in place, left hand pushes it all back towards the container. I'll lever my hand against the paddle here to tighten up that S-fold. My fingers are now wiggling to the edge of the grommets to make sure they don't creep out. I'm really cinching that up. Place a knee on top to kind of protect what I've done thus far. Work that center cell just to the outside edge there. And then I can place my bag next to it to see that it does fit within the limits I declared earlier. Basically these 2 stitch lines, not too much bigger than that. I'll work the Velcro line of the free bag under canopy. Get that to the outside. The lower paddle has done its job. I'll pull it and move it to the upper layer. If I place it in line with the previous S-fold, they'll end up nice and square. But I know that as I kneel on this and push it forward, that I'm going to inevitably work this top fold forward and away from alignment. So I'll start by overhanging that lower fold to prime myself for success. With that in place, nicely rooted, scoop under the canopy, being careful of the lines, flip everything towards the apex. Before letting go, I'm going to kind of wrench it together, using friction and little gentle coercion to keep it in place. Moving to this side, gently balance my knees on it, not putting all my weight on here. Be careful when using wooden paddles. If they do splinter, it's a nightmare. I'll only use wood on canopy. I started with aluminum paddles, but have moved to this for safety and consistency. I'll remove those two clamps. Using the two paddles that are in place, I can kind of lever them against each other to tighten up that S-fold, even going so far as to tension the skin to make these lower corners sharp. Those are what dictate the finished shape within our free bag. So having them nice and sharp really fills out the lower corners of the reserve tray. Got them there. I'll bring the ears up onto my knees, exposing the last three clamps that I've used. If you see how well it keeps things contained, at this point in most pack jobs it would be pretty fluffy, but these clamps are a godsend when it comes to repeat cleanliness. There's three. I'll let it relax back down. Grabbing the bulk of the ears in hand, I'll gently separate them, not too much. And then I'll start collecting that center seam. Walking my fingers down it to guide it all to the center. As I start to tuck some of this bulk in, I'm not trying to centralize the bulk. I want a little left, a little right. Working my way there. When I've gone as far as I can, or when you reach the nose itself, stop, and I'll kind of scoop this to either side. Using the heel of my hand, I'll trap the center seam there. Now I can address each ear with both hands. Classic methodology for the ear fold would be to take all this in hand, flip it under, whatever that is, bag it. Because we have determined we want 3 different densities, let's be more intentional with it. I can take my tail stack, my C to D flake, flip it over and out of the way for a second. With my nose A to B and B to C reductions, I can grab them in kind of a backhand grip. Using the floor, I can let them S-fold into that midsection. That small S-fold has been created. I can collect that down. I feel some density being created. That leaves me with the tail stack and the C to D flake up here. Significantly softer, less bulk, less volume. I can do a very intentional ear fold right around there. And that makes this last section just super soft. Helpful to the jumper for comfort and for proper closure of the riser covers. With that ear contained, I'll bring the bag on around. Ears deep into the pack job. I'll stop there and smack the paddles flat, flush. S-fold stack in hand, I'll just bring the Velcro line under. This side will do the same, so we have the tail stack C to D flake, flipped to the inside, nose A to B and B to C, and this backhand grip gets its own S-fold. Collect that into that midsection. Tail stack and C to D, soft ear fold. I don't worry too much about dragging the skin over, making this a single skin ear. We've done all the work thus far. It will be fine if it's a little squishy, little fluffy. Gently bring the bag around. Obviously, the harder of the two sides is the second. Bulk of that is there. Remove my paddles. S-fold stack in hand, slip the Velcro line under. Cool. I prepare the safety stow by tucking a bite of bridle into my current right-hand side. I do my left stow first. The routing of this does not matter either direction, but I have a reason behind doing it. As my lines leave the container or leave the canopy, stow first here, then the excess trails to the line stow pouch from this side. That is with the idea of some AAD pouches still having Velcro. They are all on this side of the container that I've encountered. So if my last line bite leaves from here, it's at least further away from potential Velcro snags. All tools accounted for and out of the way. Only thing left is a soft bodkin right now. I'll flip the mouth of the free bag down. As I work the canopy into the bag, I don't want to crush these corners that I work so hard to keep sharp. So I'm grabbing that lower fold and working it in. When I see I'm at my Velcro line, I'm as deep as I need to be in the free bag. No need to shove further. I can separate my grommets slightly to give me some space for the AAD. And then pull some safety stow through. I'll hand myself the bite of lines. And slip the safety stow around. Cool. As you can see, it took very little outside manipulation to get this nearer the shape that I want. That's protruding a little bit, it doesn't take much to get it in. I used to have paddles down the side walls trying to keep them square, but I found with sharper reduction folds, you basically can have your finished product before it's even in the container. Checking that I've got 3 different densities. I like the taper. I like how soft my ears are. Yeah, decent shape to it, so I'm happy to carry on. Stage these to clear my mind. Grab my line protector Velcro. I sit on the bridle so my canopy doesn't run away from me. Open up the line stow pouch. Mate the pile to the hook to cover it, protect the lines from it. Cool, and we'll stow some lines. So with them under tension, I try not to milk the slack out of it too many times. I want it to stay consistent, but if you do that too much, it will start to disturb the way the lines lay within each other. With that in hand, I'll pull it towards me. I'll let that first bite relax down into the free bag or into the line stow pouch. First working it down to the center, over to the side. As you see, I'm not fighting it, I'm just kind of working with it until it finds how it wants to lay in there. Translucent bags are nice because you can squish your bites down from the outside to really clean them up. Using a paddle, we can honestly turn it on edge. Use that to get your line bite down in. If you find that it's a little too fiddly for your fingers, paddle works great. Carrying on. Finish up the last line stows. I stow all the way up to the riser ends. Much easier to pull out excess if you need it than it would be to shove it back in at that point. Line's well away from the Velcro. I'll expose about an inch or two at a time and mate it up as cleanly as I can. Okay. At this point, I'll stack the risers on top of the free bag. I kneel on them, and then I'm going to kind of push into the mouth of the free bag to create some space for the AAD. I take a second to crisp up these corners to make sure that they stay sharp and pronounced. They are kind of a crucial component of filling these corners of the reserve tray, so don't let them get lost in the mix. Some free bags envelop everything. Great style, works well, but for this specific combination, this container system, we do want pronounced corners. Got some space there. We'll make a closing loop. I'll kind of unroll and open up the container to get a little more access to where I'm headed. Get flaps out of the way using a clamp. The weight of them will kind of keep them down. We can see what the previous length was. This combination I would expect to be within the mid-range. This is a 308 with an OP 143. Our standard loop length for Vector 3s is 4.5, plus or minus a half. Within the rigging loft, we hold our people to plus or minus a quarter because we have consistent conditions there. If I were to assess this loop, I don't like how short that tail is. Unlikely it would release, but why not give it a little more buffer as well. This one came out to just past 4 3/4, not quite 4 7/8. Functional, looked okay when it was there, but I think we're going to be closer to the 4.5. All right, there's a million ways to make a loop, as long as you use the right material, the proper knot, and the proper routing. However you achieve your loop length is fine with me. I'll tie a figure 8, slip the washer to the end. I stretch it across its full length, basically reducing the slippage that can happen within the finger trap. Yet another variable set aside. Now I have something more scientific to work off of. I want a finished loop length of, I'm thinking 4 3/4 for this one. I know I said 4.5, excuse me. Within the routing of the washer, there's about 3/4 of an inch of loop involved in that. If I want an easy way to measure a loop, I can say, okay, I want 4.5 inches, add that 3/4, make my mark. 4 3/4. So this I'll measure to 5.5 because our finished loop length is going to be 4 3/4. 5.5. Make a mark. Transfer that mark on around the loop. I'll slip that mark just so it comes past the washer itself. Tie a double overhand as the first knot. Start cinching it up. For me, when the mark on the loop is coming from the standing end towards the running end and just about to enter the knot, I know that when properly cinched, that mark will have made it to this side of the washer. A little bit theoretical until you try it, but works for me. Then tie a single overhand to back up your double overhand. Might be a better idea to use a T-bodkin than a screwdriver to stretch at this point. This is an unused screwdriver, has never turned to screw, so I know there's no sharp edges or flash on it. And then stretch that a bit and check that it meets what I planned it to be. Yes, 4 3/4 on the dot. Put my loop making tools away. And then trim that figure 8 knot off the end because I don't want any snaggy points within the reserve tray. With a fresh loop, I will feed it through. You're more than welcome to dig inside the back pad trying to fiddle this through, but I use a latch hook tool or a crochet tool, crochet hook, to just grab it and pull it on through. Over the course of a day, it does save some time. Ooh. All right, grab a pull-up cord. Cypress loop material is perfectly fine. We use 525 Spectra because we can get it by the gigantic roll, and it tends to last a bit longer. It doesn't shed fibers like the cypress material sometimes does. Reserve tray wide open. Clamp the risers to the free bag, lift it up and over, let it relax in. All right, laying the risers over the yoke. I do want to ensure that they are snug against the yoke and not hanging out. That interferes with the main risers when they're able to sit next to it, and all I see is accelerated wear. So having these nice and snug, part of the system, out of sight, out of mind. Main risers do their thing until the time comes where it's needed, and then they come into play. To get a nice snug riser, I'll put my heel just below the ring cover. That lets me get tension along here. If I did it here, yes, I could build tension, but the second I straighten it out, slack is now input. So I go down here. We've gone to a bit more narrow yoke design, and it can be a little fiddly to try and get the risers to align, but it is just practice. Risers under that number 1 flap. Straighten the main lift web. Tension on the risers. Flip them under and place a clamp. I balance the free bag kind of on that lower, on that upper edge of the lower flap. Rest it on my head while I adjust the risers. The rear riser, I'll push towards the outside of the container. Front riser will go to the inside. We separate them this way because the bulkier rear riser can sit outside while the shallower front riser can sit on top of the floor plate. Makes it more consistent and comfortable across the jumper's back. And it's really important for the TIs, especially when you're using a VR with L bars. Those are large chunks of hardware that they will absolutely feel if they get stacked on top of each other. The previous rigger has flipped the toggles up. No problem with that. I like the memory it creates. They come out, they look all right when they deploy. Feel free to do that. The only thing we ask you not to do in this instance is tucking them under the Velcro. They could be as well as gone to a new jumper that's never encountered this setup for the first time. And if in the event of a reserve deployment, if they can't see an accessible toggle, some are just not sure what even to grab. Obviously, it's a training failure, but let's prime them for success by having them open and exposed. Cool, riser's nicely fanned out. I'll lay that protective number 1 flap on top of it. Release my slip knot of the bodkin, grab my pull-up cord, feed it on through. I'll let that bag relax down. Cool, so that's pretty central there. I'm gonna kneel on the grommet. I will protect this upper fold by scooping my pointer finger into it. Middle finger is going to direct the lower corner down into the reserve tray. And I ensure that it stays proud and pronounced there. So protect, direct, bury it into that tray, and then keep it pronounced. I can grab the S-fold stack and kind of wiggle walk it towards the bottom of the container. And at the same time, my fingers are feeling that I've filled those lower corners. Filling those lower corners is crucial. When people short stow their lines and don't leave enough excess, the lines come straight to the center here, and they have a chance to scoop into the squishy section under the reserve. There have been instances of that snagging, causing a malfunction, ripping reserve trays. So we want those corners as full as possible to reduce the chance of that happening. So when I feel it fill up, we'll move to the other side. Pretty happy with that. Both ends of the pull-up cord. Look them together and thread it through the AD cutter and the number 1 flap grommet at the same time. Clear, not turned around the cutter. Make a mental note when you pass it through the cutter, just something silly, notice something different. So when you're losing sleep at night wondering if you threaded the AD cutter, you have that to go back on. It becomes such a part of our process that these things can just be afterthoughts. Of course you did it, but your brain won't let you believe it until you see it again. So I like to have some thought in the moment to connect to that. I'm keeping the line bites just under this section here, trying to sweep them down. I'm not letting them crawl up under this flap. As we pull the flap, I can smear my thumb down the type 3 tapes on the free bag to get more easily get to grommet. Knees on either side of that, I'll pull it up through. Pin that. Now we'll V-fold the bridle. I use this lower stitch line as my limit. Kind of aim for folds about that big. The manual does say V-fold, whether you interpret that as back and forth or 2 stacks on one side, 2 stacks on the other. It's kind of up to you. Cool. This rig does have a sky hook, so I want to have that in mind when I'm sizing out these folds, so it falls in the right spot. And I'll lay that off to my right side. Thread through the number 2 flap. I use the tool to just reduce strain on my hand. I haven't used it under tension yet. You'll see that after the pilot shoots down. I protect these bridle folds with the back of my hand while I close the number 2 flap over, ensuring that the ears of the reserve don't roll back onto themselves. I want to keep those sharp and straight. Pull up through, swap the pin to the next level. As a real world scenario, I've noticed that that loop's pulling through a bit more than I expected it to. I did a lot for a bit more time during this pack job, so why not shorten it? Not the best method to shorten it, but it is acceptable to tuck a tail of this under there. If it does get excessive, if you need more than, let's say, a bite under that section of the loop, go ahead and make a new loop. I think for now I'm going to do just a singular tuck, and that should reduce the length by about 1/8 of an inch. Hasn't changed the functionality. The knot stays pressed against where it started. I'm not a fan of dragging the knot over and through, but that tail will not hinder any functionality. Making sure it gets back under that spandex that's in the bottom there, the elastic. Tail's tucked nicely. There's my cutter thought, just had it again. Pin on top of one. That felt a bit better when I pulled it this time. 1, 2. There's no real memory in this bridle yet. I do see some previous folds, but if you're going to see that rig over and over, take your time, make it look good the first time you encounter it, and then every subsequent pack job will be easy to follow your folds. It's neat to see over time, too, how my interpretation of what was right at the time has changed, or what I liked at the time. The placement of the bridle folds has varied slightly through the years, but it's all fundamentally the same. Cool. Skyhook off to the right side, proper length of excess there. Through the number 2 flap. Protect those folds, bring the number 2 flap down. All right, for the skyhook, we'll take the green tab, tuck it inside the green pocket. Kind of finicky on new rigs, but if you kind of wiggle it, it finds its way in. Well seated inside of there, crosses the number 2 flap. I'm ensuring that the red lanyard is deep into the Type 3 pocket there with enough excess to reach the actual end of the skyhook. I'd rather not see this being so mobile that it can float around. If I do have excess, I want it towards the jumper side of things so the skyhook stays in place and doesn't slip around in there. Red lanyard on the skyhook. I'll grab some seal thread. I don't remember who I picked the tip up from, but they said to break the seal thread when you're about to tie a skyhook, so you're sure that it is the 4 3/4 pound seal thread as opposed to 40-pound E-thread. I try not to lick it because it makes it too fuzzy, but I sure did. I find threading up from the bottom through this Lexan is a bit easier, but sometimes this is a 5-minute struggle. We'll then tie a surgeon's knot, which is right over left 1, 2 passes, cinch. Left over right for a singular pass, cinch. And a right over left, single overhand will back that knot up. It's known as the surgeon's knot or the rigger's knot. Grab your snips, trim your tails to an appropriate length, 10, 12 millimeters or so. It's a good spot to aim for. One last check, green tab, deep in green pocket, red lanyard in red pocket, on the skyhook sealed. I'll continue, thread through the 2A flap, close that. All right. We'll input a fold into the bridle, directing it up towards the number 1 flap. I do that nicely in line with that number 2 flap. We have limits within which to work to fold our bridle onto this flap. I don't like to go past the binding tape. I don't also like to have it too small because that stacks up too high and has a rounded shape on the top. We want flat and consistent. From here, I'll then put a 90-degree fold into the bridle, 45 this way, 90 that. Working to my limits, which is that binding tape. Try and use all the real estate I have. If you'll see each subsequent fold, this is just too far, but I make each one come in about 1/8 of an inch. Just gives a very nice aesthetic appeal. Functionally, stacking it all on top of each other is no problem. All right, down to that last one. It tends to fall nicely where that tripled up section of the bridle can be its own fold. I don't want to fold in that. That's a variable of volume that I'm not willing to work with. So ends right there. Trap it with my knee. Using a gun cleaning rod or your arm, run it through the pilot chute. Swap my knee for my hand. Make sure that didn't get away. I like to place the swedge at the bottom of the reserve, at the bottom of the pilot chute spring, either at my 6 o'clock position or my 12 o'clock position. A lot of times it falls right here at the 6 and can be nicely hidden under the number 3 flap. Peek down into it to see that your pull-up cord runs cleanly as it looped around any coils of your spring. All right. I'm going to compress the pilot chute with the pull-up cord in my mouth. Definitely don't pull too hard if you have fabric trapped in the spring. You want to be so gentle about it because those pressure holes that'll develop from sliding it through, or yeah, you could owe the customer another pilot chute if you really messed it up. I'm going to swap my knee plate for my knee. And then bring this tool into the equation to be used as it's intended for the first time. Cool. I'm really compressing the pilot chute spring. I'm not cranking it down. I'm using my weight to bring it down and then taking up whatever the loop gives me. With that under tension, I can remove my temp pin. Got just enough loop beyond the grommet to be able to pin it. Do so. All right. So common thing on the red cap pilot chutes. This pilot chute is to be used, must be used with a V300 container or smallest container. It can be used on anything else, even a tandem if you're in a pinch. One thing I've noticed with that is the upper ring is just slightly smaller than the lower ring. When I have this down, I feel like kind of a lumpy, bumpy section here. That is the tape that runs around the base of my pilot chute. To address that, I can lip it up and just get that to tuck under the cap. Similar to the sun path method of resting your knee on one of the positions of the clock while you're working on the other side, you can just lip it up and pop that down. I want to feel that there is a smooth transition here and no lumps that will be visible through the side flaps. It did not take much doing because that feels pretty consistent now. These clamps have served their purpose. I'll remove them. The risers are now under enough tension to not need them. We'll reduce the pilot chute. I'll lay it out nice and flat. Our manual asks or tells you to accordion fold this section of the pilot chute. To achieve that, I'll hold it in hand, maybe 2.5 to 3 inches. Push it away from me. I'll pick that up, bring it back towards me. Yeah. If it gets away from you, just redo it. It's no big deal. I'll do one more there. And then a little fold to clean it up. Anything short of physically rolling it is a functional way to reduce a pilot chute. You just want to make sure that it will launch as you expect it to. If you're modifying your method, do a few test pulls. Pack it one way, pull it, see how it launches off the floor. Yeah, be confident in what you're putting in there because it's your jumper's life and your livelihood on the line. We'll reduce this side in a similar method. The extra bulk that I have up here, I'm going to kind of sweep towards the 9 and 3 o'clock positions. There's sometimes a dip within pack jobs that develop just nature of the beast, so by pushing some bulk there, I can bolster it up a little bit. 1, 2, 3 swept under. Leaves me with kind of a lot of fluff for this section. It might look sloppier than the previous, but that is okay. It's a little more fiddly here. All right, the corners of it kind of hang out. I'll address them in a second. Bring the number 3 flap down, ensure that the pilot chute material didn't roll on top of the cap. When removing the pin, I'm taking care to not scratch the grommets. That is likely the most common thing we replace on containers when they show up at the UPT loft. To achieve that, though, I can put gentle tension on it here. I'm both cranking and levering it towards this point to separate some space between my grommets, allowing me to extract the pin. My toe is also very close to the previous flap, or as close to the grommet of the previous flap to help separate them. Crank it down, lever it up, and it should come out with ease. It almost squeezes itself out when you give it the space to do so. For this little corner, I do have a little bit of a section to fill here, so I can just sweep that under. I want to feel that there's consistent soft bulk through here, no protrusions through the fabric. Feels good. I'll bring the number 4 flap on top of it, thread through. Ensuring the material didn't roll on top of the cap. I'll pull some tension. As I'm pulling this flap, I'm now going to close the reserve tray corner around the canopy. Yeah, really helps to keep that corner proud and fill it up. So, bit of tension, scoop under, close it around to fill that. And I'm working that sidewall a bit taller instead of just muscling through this. By doing that, I can reduce some of these wrinkles. It is the nature of taking square fabric and putting a negative curve here and building square woven fabric into a 3-dimensional picture. Things are going to have wrinkles. It's not too big a deal. Anytime it bugs somebody, I just pull out my rig and show them. It's like, look, I've spent a lot of time on mine to make it look like this, and there's still some to be seen. Cool. Being gentle on the grommets, pull that pin out with ease. More. That kind of escaped. Get that back to where it was. Corner just kind of gets squished. Cord through. Didn't roll over the cap. That's kind of a way I smooth it away from it. A little bit of tension, and then I'll close this corner around. Even with just one short-term pack job, there's going to be some memory within this, and as y'all saw before, we're doing what we can to reduce the look that it had beforehand. It'll just take time for that to relax out, but sometimes they just get set in too early, and we'll always have memories of them. Nice and close, lever apart, easy extraction. And the number 5. Before pinning number 6, I can take a second to dress the container up a little bit. I like to get it wide open and unrolled. I'll stand it up on its sidewall and just beat the devil out of it. You can put your knee into it if you need to. For the bottom of the reserve tray, obviously being careful with the AED there, but some gentle thumps to help shape it, to flatten this and help it stand taller. Rolling the riser cover in, I can then work that down. Having a smooth sidewall or even a little dip to it gives you space for those risers to sit nice and flush with the cover, with this. It just gives a better appearance overall. It doesn't seem as wide up top as when it's just packed willy-nilly and risers thrown in there. For those that saw it earlier, you may already see how much flatter these riser covers are laying to where they're almost invisible when that's closed. We'll see for sure when we get the main in there. I'll be doing that later. A little bit of shaping, a little bit of squishing. All right. Clean the seal thread from the last sealing. I stage my pen right on the corner of the Velcro so I can pick it up easily when I'm bound up with the closing tool. Thread through the number 6. If packed appropriately, this number 6 will lay really nice and flat. There should not be curvature to it. I'm going to have just a little bit, I see, but not excessive. To be able to get it grommet to grommet without pulling tension is the goal there. Cool. Easy pickup of the pin. All right, I want to get that pin nice and deep in there, but not so much so that the Spectra ripcord touches the grommet, but everything that I've got before that. I'll let that relax down. Place my number 6 Velcro. Close it. To extract the pull-up cord, we pull it off to the side of the pin as you would like a main pack job, and then grab it on either side, and I'll do a quick like 1-2 just to release it. And it should pull out nicely. I feel a little tension, so another trick would be to stand it up on end. Work that number 6 flap down just enough to where now it pulls out effortlessly. Yeah, dress it up a little, seal it, log it, call your customer, tell them they're about to jump. About it. Do y'all have any questions? Anything stand out that's interesting, new, different? Something you want to see again, but not today?
2 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you use a gauge or scales to check the water pressure?
We are not bound to within our governing body, so it's not something required on each pack job. I know in certain federations have y'all pull test it, log the actual poundage of that specific one. Over the years, every time I mean, the first couple 100 pack jobs, I would pull each one to see what it was coming out to, and then got that mental feedback. It's a very personal experience of like, that doesn't feel right, let me adjust this loop. Yeah, I think it's a great thing to have held over you to do. Likely frustrating, but at least you know when it leaves your hands that it is within the limits. That said, on the lower limit of things, 5 pounds is insanely light. You could flick that out, 5 to 22 pounds. And I think that's a carryover from the military days. But there's not a single military container I've packed that was 5 pounds. It'd be absurd. Yeah.
Second question.
Uh-huh.
Remember one of the lines wasn't quite attached
Yes.
and the top one of the brakes was rather brightly stained.
Yes.
Do you get in contact with previous packers about that?
We see it so often that we don't. If it is an egregious mistake that would kill somebody, I will speak with them. If it is, I try to never resort to the Facebook blasting. Nobody wins. Nobody learns anything. But yeah, if the situation deems it necessary, then yes, we will. Through official routes, of course, that had come from my boss. I would let her know. She would contact them professionally. Basically just, hey, heads up, tighten up, that's it. We leave it alone after that, as long as we don't have repeat. It takes a lot to get the FAA to investigate parachute riggers. So we can only help each other by bringing those things to light. But it's not my instant reaction to finding something out of the ordinary or a common error that could slip through the cracks. Yeah, sensitive situation to walk into, but I don't know, what is...
Making that contact is so difficult, isn't it?
A lot of
Because
times.
It's so easy to get someone wound up. But equally, if someone doesn't know that it's happened, they can't possibly improve
Yes.
in the future, can they?
And not a single person of contact has ever had anything to say except, oh my God, thank you, I will learn from this. And like, that's the response. If you defend it, ooh, you've lost me at that point. Yeah, if y'all see though, that kind of light bulb shape at the bottom is gone. We've got a bit flatter, cleaner sidewalls. I'd like to be able to take care of this, but if this were my consistent customer each time, I would try and tighten it up. During the unpacking process, you can really notice a lot about how it was done previously, and especially if it was your work, my assessment would start here. It would be like, all right, how do I feel about the bulk? Is the pilot chute sitting up too high? Has it stayed nice through my pack cycle? Yeah, just things that you can see and improve upon each time. We know, I mean, the last one would have been functional. This one will be functional. One of these I would prefer to pay for, and that would be a little cleaner, a little sharper. I mean, especially brand new gear. But yeah. Any more questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are there any ways you can modify that technique for older Vector 3s where the UPT might have changed the design a bit?
Gotcha. The reserve tray itself has stayed so consistent that I pack the same way I do on a Vector 2 as I do on the most modern Vector 3. Most other manufacturers, I do use some of the tips and tricks through here. I'm not sure how much of that you saw, but like the way I do a cheat fold reduction fold or a small cheat fold within my S fold. A lot of these are just good things to have in the tool belt for when addressing other containers. Obviously, sticking to what the manufacturer says is the way to protect yourself, but they can be made to look better. I do what I think is a pretty solid Sunpath long split ear pack job. I like to use their method on their equipment because the whole design was based around it. So, but yes, back to your question. Yes, I use that similar method, same method on the Vector, early Vector 3s, even Vector 2s, which people are still spending $2,000 on to get reharnessed and refurbished to jump. And we're not sure why, but more power to them. Yeah. Sweet. Thank you all.